That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to provide a brief introduction to a recording of a panel on which I sat regarding Pedro Almodóvar's 1999 film, All About My Mother.
That's right. It was a screening through the Queer Diaspora series at the Philosophical Research Society, which is hosted by filmmaker Gregorio Davila. And so it was you on the panel. The panel was moderated by writer, producer, ballroom historian Sydney Balou, formerly known as Sid Extravaganza.
Yeah, as of this recording, because it's a bit late after the panel actually happened, they are no longer part of the House of Extravaganza.
Also, director Aitch Alberto.
Aitch Alberto, yes, of the film Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, which is, of course, an adaptation of the celebrated novel.
I was in attendance. It's an interesting discussion.
Yes.
Do you want to provide any context? Are there any things you didn't get to cover during the discussion that you want to talk about now?
Well, if it had just been myself speaking about it, I probably would have expounded upon various themes, because there's a lot to unpack in All About My Mother, which I do cite this as my favorite Almodóvar film. Depending on the day, it might also be Habla con ella.
Should I give the basic premise of All About My Mother? It's a dramedy about a bereaved mother, an overwrought actress, her jealous lover, and a pregnant nun.
You know, clearly, and I think as the conversation reflects, you know, this is a time capsule, 1999 Oscar-winning film. I think the first of Almodóvar's films to win a major award at Cannes. I think that I would have probably talked more about, I really like the sentiment that reality needs to be completed by fiction to make life easier. And that's a quote, I believe, from the Criterion insert essay. But I would have gone down more that route, of course. And, you know, the stars of the film. We actually spent, as you'll see in the discussion, quite a lot of time talking about Antonia San Juan, who played Agrado, a trans character. And, you know, we have a review for this film when Criterion put it out on Blu-ray, and I believe I made the same mistake, misgendering the actor.
Yeah, it's a very interesting moment in the discussion because the moderator sort of casually says that the lead...
Well, she's not the lead, but a major supporting character.
This character is a cis woman. And I keep mispronouncing her name. Aitch Alberto is shocked.
Yeah.
At the revelation.
Goops and gagged, yeah.
And in the moment, sitting in the audience, I was a little uncomfortable because she's challenging that fact with the moderator.
And Sydney's like, oh, I did my research.
Well, and then it's also awkward because, you know, you have this trans woman sort of not believing that this other trans person has properly identified this actor's gender. So I think in the moment it felt awkward, like, well, like Sid did their research, and so they wouldn't just throw this out there willy-nilly.
But it was a reflection, I think, of how much this film meant to them.
Yes.
And as it did to, I think, many queer, trans, gay people that saw this film when it came out or shortly thereafter. You know, I remember very well when I first saw it. And of course, as a cisgendered gay man, you know, I have a different approach and a different perspective just because of my own life experiences. So it inherently has different meanings to me, perhaps. But it's just, I was kind of amused because I think I felt the same way upon learning that, because I wholly watched this film many times thinking Antonia San Juan was, in fact, a trans person without actually researching it. So well done, I think, her performance is.
Well, I rewatched that segment, and upon a rewatch, what really struck me was how representation, especially like queer and trans representation early on, I mean, even to this day, because it is sparse, it is so meaningful. And so what we see with Aitch is sort of a very candid emotional reaction to something that she really held close. So yeah, it was a very nice panel discussion.
And I think reflects the importance of coming together in queer spaces where you are allowed to be candid and can have those discoveries as well.
Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Okay, please enjoy.
Thank you guys so much for joining tonight. And, you know, it's so interesting. I was like watching this movie before tonight, and I watched half of it, and then I woke up this morning super early, and then I had my breakfast, and I took my prep pill, like with my breakfast. And, you know, for folks who don't know, obviously prep being the, you know, preventative for medicine for HIV. And I just thought, my God, how far we've come, right, from this story. But I thought maybe to start us off, we can just make it more of a conversation of, you know, initial thoughts. And I don't know how this movie first came to you. Maybe Nick, you could start us off.
I totally had blocked out the whole HIV/AIDS thing from my memory. It's been a while since I've watched it.
When
so
did you?
I was like, oh, it's a part of this in a real way. But I think that's so like in the background of what the movie's about. And something that I love about Pedro's work is how matter-of-fact his lens is. Like every woman in the film was just exactly who she was, as messy as she was. There was no question about anyone's gender or how they identified. And I thought that was so progressive for the time, and to see that on film. So yeah, it was just like watching it for the first time almost.
I was going to ask you, when did you first see it?
Back in the day, where I was like, Agrado, I was like, oh shit, like, oh, like I see myself in this person, but like I don't want to be that person. I don't want to go on that same journey. And it was like I was having flashbacks of how much this film in particular held me back from my own journey.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember watching it as a kid. Like, I went through this period where I was like obsessed with Almodóvar movies. Like back when, before Netflix, before streaming, where you had to go to the public library to get like foreign films. And it's so weird because I forgot the trans narrative. Like I knew like about, you know, motherhood and so on. But then I was like, wow, this must have been like an early root movie for me in many ways. And I'm curious for you, Nick, what sort of stood out for you maybe when you first saw it?
I think I was in college when I first saw it, and it felt very much ahead of its time then, and a little bit still now. Of course, there's some stuff that is dated because it's a time capsule, but yes, it allows people to be messy, and it's not judgmental, and I like that almost every scene in it is kind of blurring what's reality and what's performance. And I feel like when I probably saw that as in college, that was a little lost on me, but rewatching it again now, which maybe is the fourth time I've seen it now, I think it's really complex and layered, and speaks to how, I think Almodóvar has said this himself, how fiction allows us to make reality bearable and how we fill in the holes. And I think how stories allow us to kind of give us a template for how to deal with the messiness and the pain of life. I don't know, I feel like this is one of his films that's brimming with so much emotion, but again, I'm curious, to hear what other people have to, because we watch movies and we think, you know, we're kind of in our own heads about it, but it's interesting to hear what everybody else has to say.
That was what I was so like weirded out about doing this panel, because I was like, everybody's experience is so unique to what the movie is, you know? So like someone could be watching it and having their own interpretation of what's going on. Like I know just as much as you, so, but I find it fascinating that we're here.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because one of the quotes I isolated, which kind of gets this point, was when Agrado tells her story. And she says, it costs a lot, or at least the translation was, it costs a lot to be authentic, and one can't be stingy with these things, because you're more authentic the more you've dreamed you are. And, you know, I love that obviously she gives the rundown of, you know, how much it costs for her to be the woman of her dreams. And, you know, I was thinking a lot about that idea of authenticity. I think especially upon watching it a second time and here, that really that's like the theme, you know, what this is about is, you know, telling your truth regardless, you know, obviously with Rosa and telling her mother the truth or living in her truth, and, you know, that with the trans characters as well. And, you know, this film came out in 1999, and I had recently watched Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, which was 1994. But it's, you know, such a different one, or different story, because what's fascinating is the actress Antonia San Juan, who plays Agrado, is a cis woman. Yes, yeah, I looked it up.
Wait, is
yes, she's fish.
no?
Yeah, doch, CCC.
I think we need to ask ChatGPT.
No, you can look it up. I thought it was fascinating because she's like listed of like cis actors who've
no.
played. Yes.
No.
I know. She ate that. You got to give that to her.
That woman is transgender.
No, darling. Trust me. You can.
I
Google
need
it.
a fact check. Like,
No,
stat.
trust me, I already did. And I think that's what kind of I thought was so fascinating because we're always used to cis men playing trans women, but I thought
I'm not focused on the conversation at all. Like,
you pull it up on your phone right now.
I don't have my phone. I'm focused on you now.
Yeah, but I think that was kind of what was fascinating because like when I watched it, I assumed either it's a trans woman or as they did in the 90s, have like a cis man play a trans woman. But I thought it was very interesting, a choice to have a cis woman play a trans woman, which says volumes about I think also Almodóvar's ideas about womanhood and owning it. I mean, it's hard because obviously at the time, just you saw less trans people on screen in general, but I thought, especially in regards to his comments, I don't know if people saw in the news recently, he was given this Charlie Chaplin Award at Lincoln Center in New York, and he gave a rousing speech, obviously talking about denouncing Trump's fascism, but also really honoring Hunter Schafer's womanhood and the womanhood of so many trans women. And I almost feel like, that says so much. I'm sorry I blew your mind, darling, but you can look it up.
I just think you're, I think you're wrong.
I'm not.
Because is she really?
I did my research. I'm a researcher.
Okay, so my experience with this movie, which you are blowing my mind, was that it was so groundbreaking because he was casting a trans woman in that role. That's always been my understanding of it. That is disappointing.
Do you want to unpack that for us?
No, I mean, we could continue the conversation, but like it's sort of the whole point of the character very much should be embodied by a trans woman. So I'm having a lot of feelings about it.
It's totally fair.
It does add an extra layer of what's playing with reality versus the perception of reality and performance. Because the character of Agrado, that she's on stage, her performance is her life,
right,
that she's giving us. So it's thinking about it in this light, it's giving me like Rock Hudson as a gay man playing a straight man, pretending to be a gay man. Like there are layers and layers to unpack, and however far you go back. If this were made today, I would assume that Almodóvar would not cast a cis woman to play that role.
Totally. I don't think this movie would ever get made today, especially like in this market and climate, which is so sad, especially like it's a European film. Like Americans would never have made this movie and will never make it.
Yeah. It's to that point. Just obviously, it's like gets into this discussion of performance, and obviously the film plays a lot with that. I think we see so many layers of performance with All About Eve, Bette Davis, even the homage at the end to all the kinds of performances people play, and even the role of being a mother. Like I think upon watching it a second time, that idea of chosen family, really stands out even more. And just curious, maybe if what you guys' thoughts are on that.
On the chosen family aspect.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Manuela, we see her literally step in as a mother for Rosa.
That's what I also love so much, because it's these women recognize each other in such a real way. They were always showing up without question, because it was just like, whether it's different or not, we are experiencing the same reality. And so that to me was what, aside from the chosen family, it was like this camaraderie between these women specifically that I really loved.
Yeah, I totally agree. Nick, did you want to add to that?
Well, what I like about it is showing this group of women being resilient without, the world has not made a space for them to function the way they are, and yet they are still persisting and thriving and helping each other out. Because, when this was made, this was before any place had gay marriage, which was 2000 in Holland. So I think that it makes it seem even more relevant revisiting it now.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you say that because I will say I was also really struck by I was like, oh wow, this passes the Bechdel test with flying colors because it's you barely see men, and when they're there, I mean they're kind of oafish, like that guy looking for a blowjob or whatever. But I will say I also love the fact that again trans women were part of that womanhood too, and he was very intentional about doing that. And I mean, to your point about gay marriage, it's funny because I was thinking back, I remember when the whole 20 years ago when that was the topic of sort of LGBTQ rights or really GL, I feel back then, I remember Spain was always one of the places at the forefront, and they legalized gay marriage before most places in 2005. And I was always so curious, why Spain? Because I was isn't this a very Catholic country? But I looked it up, and I don't know if people know this, but under the Franco regime, I mean, it was truly horrific. There were literal conversion camps for gay and trans people, and truly gay men, cis men, and trans women particularly were very much targeted. And so a lot of the reforms, once they shifted to a democracy in 1978, were about really embracing LGBTQ plus rights, which, obviously in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about Veneno and, just sort of why is it that we see Spain as that place? And, I mean, I was looking this up of just Almodóvar, he was born in 1949, so he was 26 when Franco is out, which kind of tells you sort of what his perspective was about shifting that. But anyway.
And I think the film is kind of speaking. That's why one of the only men we see is Penelope Cruz's father, who is he doesn't have his memory anymore. So he can't even recognize his child. And that man also was a director in his own right for many years. But he, I think he's supposed to be representative of Spain's past. Say no, hear no. What's the saying? Speak no, hear no, see no evil. Put their heads in the sand.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, it's so interesting because it's also obviously that moment when she sees her dog again, and you kind of get that memory back of what kind of was of this distant past, but also the juxtaposition of her with I don't know, this new group of friends of this womanhood, and maybe that was the idea of a future for the country as well, that it would be led by women or something.
Yeah, embracing their flaws, and we're all going to hold each other and move forward.
I love that.
I was curious, maybe we could talk a little bit about the actual composition of the film, especially for you as a filmmaker.
He's just, I've lifted so much from him in my own work, and it's never executed the same way. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's just he's so specific and such a master of his craft, and you really see it in his choice of frames, his choice of colors, the way he introduces a character and what's behind the palette that's behind him. I'm just constantly blown away by him, and it's one of the only filmmakers that I could watch and just disconnect and actually watch the film versus the dissecting it and trying to figure out what it is that he's doing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that because I was thinking about Manuela's apartment, and that very old, I guess, 1970s wallpaper, but also just the vibrant colors of every scene. I don't know. I also, a part of me did think because it reminded me of Amélie. I just feel there's something about those European movies of the 90s that they had this extremely vibrant aesthetic. But I guess it's so interesting that it is so vibrant while a lot of these topics are kind of dark, of heroin usage and, living with HIV and, I don't know if you have any thoughts about the juxtaposition of those two.
Well, all his films are very colorful, which is interesting because he works with a lot of different cinematographers. This is the last film I believe he did with Afonso Beto, who did Flower of My Secret and Live Flesh with him. But this was the last one. But yet, when you watch an Almodóvar film, you know right away that it's his film, and he switches out production designers. So, I mean, I guess that is the true definition of an auteur, perhaps, even though every film is a group effort. But I think he likes that there's a soapiness to it. It kind of reminds me of
Totally.
Douglas
Very
Sirk.
theatrical.
Yeah. But at the same time, not the sentimentality is not inauthentic. Like you're still with these people, feeling for them.
Yeah, it feels super lived in, which I think adds to the authenticity. But something that I love, especially about this film, is that not only in the palette, but like in the way they interact, there's so much joy in their trauma. He never lets them sort of pity themselves. Yes. And in turn, we're on that journey with them.
I love that you said that, because I was thinking about how everything was kind of matter of fact. I think you even said that earlier. Like the fact that Manuela is like, oh, I got to go find Lola, so I'll just go down to the stroll where the girls are. And like, and I kind of love that, the way she even finds Agrado. It's like, okay, I'm just going to clobber this guy, and then, we'll just kiki it off while we go to the pharmacy to clean you up, It's just sort of...
I love that morning after scene where Agrado's like, oh, I can't suck dick. And Manuela goes, you shouldn't work today. Comic timing's pretty good.
True. So I guess we're getting close to time. Can we do like questions maybe if people want to have a conversation? Cool, yeah. Maybe we can open it up. I mean, this is a very open forum conversation, and if anybody had any sort of thoughts that they wanted to throw into the group chat, otherwise we can all just kind of keep chatting for a little bit.
I was curious what you thought of Lola.
Yes, that's a really good question. Me or
both of you?
You start. I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, you know my feeling.
I don't.
I want to hear yours first.
Oh, wait, why? Oh.
I don't know.
Well, let's see, Lola. Obviously so complicated. No,
I loved the character, the idea of it, the fact that her gender wasn't identified by her sexuality or however you perceived that. That to me felt really fresh, and we need to see more of those trans women. I think from my perspective, it's not the representation that I want to see or the embodiment of women like me on screen.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, I feel like we always have to do this thing where it's like an asterisk of like, it was the time, Because truly, I mean, Transparent was like 12 years ago now. And that's...
It's really been that long.
Yes, it was 2013. And, obviously it tells you how much we need like actual trans representation in film and TV. But, I always have to like remember the context, like, and part of why I brought up PrEP was like HIV was a death sentence. Like folks need to understand literally how far we've come, where the cocktail drug literally that prolonged people's lives was only invented in 1996. Right. This film came out 3 years later. So to show trans people of any sort as human, was such a big deal. Like the fact that none of these people, like any of the trans women, Lola included, or Agrado, are seen as less than, that they're just welcomed and there's no question mark. And even, I thought what was so powerful was when Agrado pushes back against everyone who wants to talk about her dick. Like I mean, literally, that's something you would see in 2025. The fact that this was happening 26 years ago, like truly blows my mind. So I guess with Lola, like, yes, it's annoying because it's like, okay, this is not actual representation, but I will, you do have to give some grace and say she was allowed to be a full human with complexity and not, like a total villain and not like a total, hero or, whatever golden person of sorts.
Yeah, I thought it was curious that Almodóvar described Lola's entrance. He compared Lola's entrance to that of death in The Seventh Seal, the Ingmar Bergman film.
Yes. Yeah, no, it says volumes.
Yeah, like a very fashionable version of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially that funeral scene was so cunt. I love, right. But it's like, what else would you expect, especially because, I don't know, I love that even though, as we were saying, like, there was a level of verite to things or a level of, like, sort of matter-of-factness, there was still that, like, telenovela vibe of like, you know, and
the
then
melodrama. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like in everything he does. Yeah.
I know, but
And he is like, all his work is super trans body obsessed, I think, too. Like even The Skin I Live In.
oh yeah.
There's always, he always highlights trans folks in a really beautiful way, I think.
Yeah, a very humanizing
Yeah.
way, which says a lot, especially as an ally.
This was in reference to his film Julieta, but John Waters had said something, I'm paraphrasing, but this is something Hitchcock would have made if he really liked women.
Yeah, I love that.
Ooh, that's a very good way of putting that. I'm wondering, is that a good place for us to end? All right, well, I just want to say thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.